Tony Dungy, kind enough to join us, Hall of Fame coach, and won some Super Bowls as a player with the Steelers, as a head coach with the Colts. And the Rooney Rule was created back in 2002. That was a reaction to when Tony got fired with the Buccaneers. Dennis Green of the Minnesota Vikings also got fired as well. And Tony joins us. We'll get to that topic in a moment here, Tony. I'm curious how much of an advantage it'll be for Sean McVay having already coached in a Super Bowl.
Well, it's interesting. And Sean said after their Super Bowl loss to New England, he did some things wrong. He overthought things in those 2 weeks. If he went back, he would do things a little differently. And I know he's learned from that. I was in Cincinnati on Wednesday interviewing Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor was on that staff. He was at that game. He did it too. So he wasn't the head coach, but he was there and he was watching everything Sean did. He saw the schedule. He had the benefit of being there also. So I think it's going to be minimal advantage. You have two guys that kind of went through it at the same time in 2019.
And also coaches have talked about if you go in with a game plan, you have to be ready to adjust your game plan because your game plan really is dictated by what happens in the game itself. Yeah. Like you can't just say, this is what we're doing and we're going to continue to do that, right? You fall into that trap.
No, you can't. But I will tell you this, and Sean's right, that 2 weeks can get to you. You're used to planning and taking a week and go, and now you've got an extra week and you start to second guess yourself. I know I've told you the story. We went a whole week saying we're not going to let Devin Hester touch the ball. And then the second week, I started thinking about it. I hear a chapel service. The guy talks about David and Goliath, and he said, you can't be scared of the giant. And at the last minute, I changed my mind and said, you know what, guys, Saturday night before the game, I hope we lose the toss. We're going to kick off the Devin Hester. When we pound him, we're going to send a message. They're going to know we mean business. If we'd only had a week, Devin Hester would have never touched the ball.
Wait, are you blaming the preacher?
The chaplain. I am. I blamed him. He takes total responsibility for it. And then you know what he told me afterwards, Dan? He said, no, you got the wrong message from that. It wasn't that David wasn't afraid. You got to know the weak spot. He hit Goliath right between the eyes. You got to go for the weak spot. That's why I wish you'd have told me that Saturday night. Yeah.
I think this is the anniversary. I think 15 years ago.
I think it is.
Yeah, 15 years ago tonight. What did you feel like after winning a Super Bowl?
You know, I won one as a player, and it was a real thrill, and it was great to be part of it. But when you're the head coach and you win the game and you get up on that podium and you're looking down and you see not only your players, but your staff down there and their families. And then you look up in the stands and you see your fans and they're holding up signs. And then you go back to the parade in your city and you realize this is bigger than just a team accomplishment. I felt like, man, you know, the city of Indianapolis, the state of Indiana, the Ursays, everybody, our whole organization, you just feel really, really proud. And then, of course, my year, it was even a little bit more special. Lovie Smith and I and African-American coaches for 40 years, first time anybody had been in that game. And then you get notes. I got a telegram. I mentioned to you in the past, got a telegram from Bill Russell saying, congratulations, welcome to the club. And wow. you can't put words to that.
But how much pressure are you carrying in a situation? Even though it was Lovie Smith, so two African-American coaches, but was there extra pressure of being African-American head coach in a Super Bowl?
I think there would have been had Lovie not been on the other side. There would have been, you know, we knew at that point, hey, history is going to be made. Somebody's going to win it. And, you know, we're going to be able to say, you know, these African-American coaches can coach on the same level. But had I been in there by myself, I think I would have felt a little bit more, hey, we've got to win this just to show people we can do this.
I was wondering about coaches who don't call plays. Are you aware of what the plays are? Are you listening?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And you have the final say on everything. You know, Tom Moore would call our offensive plays, and I'm sitting there and I'm saying, no, Tom, I want to run, or I want to get the ball to Marvin Harrison in this situation. Ron Meeks was calling my defensive calls. Hey, no, I want to blitz. I want to put pressure on him. 90% of the time, you're on the same page. And you've been in the meetings and you know what the game plan is for these situations. But there are times when, you know, you just impose your will. Hey, I want to do this. We're ahead by 8 points. Tom, we're going to run the ball 3 times and kick a field goal. I know you don't want to do that, but that's what we're going to do.
But you got to do this in a small window, though, Tony, because so you're going to have a play getting ready to be called into Peyton, and then you're there listening, and then you could say, no, I don't want to run that. So Peyton's waiting for the call to come in.
Yeah. No, and good coach, you're thinking ahead. It's not in the moment. You wait until the moment. I'm talking to Tom before the play runs. Hey, if we do this, we want to think about that. Yeah, you're involved. And
did Peyton overrule you? How often would Peyton go, no?
Well, he always had the final say. And because we're going to Tom would send in 3 plays. Hey, run left, run right, or throw. And, he had that choice. Of course, he sees something different. He's going to audible to it. That was the beauty of our system. We got the plays in so fast with the no huddle that he's got 20, 25 seconds at the line to run what he wants. But we all know, we kind of know the game plan.
We're talking to Tony Dungy, the Hall of Fame coach. When you're defensive coach, defensive-minded, former defensive back, what would you do to Joe Burrow or try to get him to do or not do?
I think all of these guys, they're so talented right now. The weaponry is so good. You have to make them make a lot of throws. You can't, kind of like people were playing Kansas City. You can't give up the 2-play touchdown drive, the 80-yard touchdown pass. So you got to make them make a lot of throws, and then you've got to get pressure. To me, that is going to be the whole key with this game. The offensive line of the Bengals, they played well against Kansas City. They struggled against Tennessee. This is the best defensive line they're going to see. How are they going to handle Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Von Miller, and create protection? If they give Burrow time, they're going to pick this secondary apart. As good as those players are, as good as Jalen Ramsey is, they can't cover those guys if Burrow has time.
I still go back to what Cincinnati did to Kansas City in the second half, and for the life of me, I can't understand why you don't run the ball. Like if they're going to play 7 defensive backs and have a spy on Mahomes, why don't I just take some clock away, run the football?
Well, Kansas City doesn't like to run, and everybody knows that. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to. The other thing that I thought Kansas City didn't do, if you think back to that first half, very few long passes, get the ball out quick, guys are open, hit them, take the 7-yard gain. In the second half, Patrick wasn't doing that. And I don't think it was because the guys were covered. It's because, okay, I'm a little bored with that 6-yard gain and that 7-yard gain. Let me see if I can get one now that and the game tightened up a little bit and I need a big play. And he passed up a lot of open guys in the second half.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think ego got in the way. I really do.
It's funny you mention it, though, because when we had the Chiefs on earlier, and Rodney, as you know, Rodney Harrison now is at the stadium, so he's doing a lot of the interviews and stuff. And I said, ask Andy Reid this for me. This is one question I'd like to ask if I was there. You've got Mahomes, you've got all these receivers, and you love to throw. Is it hard for you to call a running play because you want to see Patrick Mahomes with the ball in his hand?
Yeah.
Because you have chances to run, and Andy's always been a pass-first guy. All the way back to Philadelphia. But I think it's getting harder and harder for those guys to call runs.
Your initial reaction to the Brian Flores lawsuit was what?
I have not read the lawsuit yet. It's 58 pages. I want to read the whole thing. My initial reaction was frustration. And Brian Flores is saying, I believe, he is saying what a lot of people are talking about casually in conversation. He just brought it. He's frustrated with the system right now. And I'm going to have a lot more to say on this next week. But I think right now the NFL has a problem because you've got African-American employees, especially coaches, who are frustrated with the system right now.
If Brian Flores had called you before filing that lawsuit, what would you have told him?
Probably make sure you know what you're doing, and this is what you want to do, and this is how you want to bring it to life. It's interesting, John, you mentioned 2002. Johnny Cochran and Cyrus Murray had a meeting with the NFL, and they said, hey, we've got some issues here. We've got African-American coaches being fired with winning records, being fired in the playoffs. We've got limited access to African-American coaches getting into the system. These guys are upset. This was 20 years ago. And he said, we need to sit down at the table and you need to listen to them because the next step is going to be litigation. And I remember Johnny Cochran saying this very, very loudly. NFL, you do not want litigation. And the Fritz Pollard Alliance came into effect. We had some things going. The Rooney Rule gets put in place, diversity committees, those type of things. So I think Johnny Cochran kind of predicted that this might happen one day.
Chris Carter was on Good Morning Football and NFL Network today, and he said he was asked about what do we do? How do we make this better? And I'm paraphrasing, but it was let's groom these coaches, these assistant coaches, these minority coaches on what to expect in the interviews, prepare them better. And I don't know if you can just sort of wave a wand like that and go, we're going to prepare Eric Bieniemy to be a head coach. I don't know if you can do that, but I did, I was interested with what Chris Carter had to say.
I can appreciate that. My personal opinion is the problem is not on the supply side. The problem is on the demand side. And there's one, and I have one, I'm going to be on a soapbox about this until they change it. I think the process is flawed for everybody. And that's why we have a lot of bad decisions made and we have a lot of 1 year, 2 year hires. And it really hurts minority candidates. And I'll tell you why. We are interviewing these coaches during the playoffs. And I think that's terribly wrong. It's terribly unfair. You cannot tell me that I can prepare to play the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm trying to stop them as a defensive coordinator, and then I can take a timeout on Friday afternoon at 4:00 and interview with you, Dan, and you're asking me questions about your organization and your team, and you want me to be specific about how I'm going to make your team better. And then after that interview, go back to my thoughts on the Chiefs. And no one can be as prepared in that situation as the person who's not in the playoffs. I was in the playoffs in Minnesota 3 years, interviewed a couple of times, didn't get the jobs. The 1 year we didn't make it, I had 3 interviews with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was able to be very specific about what I wanted to do. I ended up getting that job. I don't think it was a coincidence. When people say, so-and-so came in and blew me away in the interview. Well, I could blow you away too if I had a week to look at your roster and look at your past drafts and look at how I would do it and set things up and make a PowerPoint presentation. And now you're Eric Bieniemy and these African-American coaches, who's getting the interviews? You tell me. Eric Bieniemy, Leslie Frazier, Byron Leftwich, Todd Bowles. These aren't coaches who aren't in the playoffs, because if you're African-American and you're not in the playoffs, you're probably not getting an interview.
Have you talked to the commissioner? Have you conveyed this to the commissioner?
I've said this for 5 years. I think this is wrong. I think interviewing coaches in the middle of the playoffs, it's detrimental to them and it's detrimental to the team, because you don't get a good impression of someone that can't be prepared as someone who has had a week and a half to do nothing but prepare for your interview.
Yeah, I can't, everybody keeps saying Eric Bieniemy deserves a job. I'm all for that. It feels like we're missing something here, Tony. Why does Eric Bieniemy not have a head coaching job? I know he's reportedly going to interview with the Saints. I thought he was going to get the Vikings job. So this year 3 of Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a head coaching job. Why is that?
I don't know why, but all I can do is go back to my situation. And I heard a lot of the same things in the 90s. Well, Tony Dungy's very smart. He's a good coach. He's been in some good systems. He's worked for Chuck Noll. He's worked for Marty Schottenheimer. He's worked for Denny Green. But his personality, he doesn't come across well in the interviews. He's not a overly aggressive guy. He's not this. He's not that. He doesn't interview well.
Oh.
That's what I heard about myself 30 years ago or 25 years ago. And I don't know. It's that I wasn't exactly what people were looking for. I'll give you a perfect example. I interviewed with an organization, thought it was going really well. The last question the guy asked me, he said, I understand you don't use profanity. You don't raise your voice much. How are you going to motivate my guys? And I said, I'll do it the way I always have and the way my dad did it with me. I'm going to show them that I care about them, that I know what I'm doing, that I love them. And I think I'll get that mutual respect and they'll be motivated. That's what I've done with my defenses over the years. Guy looked across at me, Dan, said, that won't work in the NFL. That's not what I'm looking for. Well, and then the word came out that I didn't interview well. The next year, I go to Tampa. They asked me kind of the similar question. I answered the same way. Mr. Glazer said, that's how I talk to my boys. That's who I want as my head coach. So I think that's what Eric Bieniemy needs, somebody that just says, you are the kind of guy I'm looking for.
Did you send a picture of your Super Bowl ring to that guy who said that your style won't work in the NFL?
We actually played against them quite often in the upcoming years, and he actually told me at an owners meeting, I was wrong.
Oh. What was his name again, Tony?
I can't go into that. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah. Do you ever run into Tom Brady in Tampa since you live there? Like at the supermarket?
Not at the supermarket or any of those places. I've seen Tom a couple times, and Clyde Christensen, who was on my staff, is the quarterback coach there. So he puts us in touch with each other periodically. And Tom he's been amazing down here. He's turned the city around and the Bucs fans around. He really has.
Safe travels to Los Angeles. Always great. My best to the family. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you, brother. I miss you. You know that.
Thank you, Tony. Miss you too. And some good stories there.